Hello, this is Jay Essen. We are back today on March the 18th of 2025, and it's time finally to play The Little Match Girl 2, Annus Evertens. I should note briefly before we begin, I have been recording these videos on Tuesdays. Starting next week, for 1 or 2 weeks, I will be streaming on Thursdays. And then starting in April, I will most likely be switching, hopefully permanently, to weekends. So, to begin, this is the first official mainline sequel to the original game that Ryan created, and it is the game that really sold me on the premise of the Little Match Girl series of games. I played it, and I did not finish it, but this was the one that really won me over in a big way. I really like this game a lot. So, let us begin. Again, I keep saying that. In The Little Match Girl 2 by Hans Christian Andersen, the little match girl is hired to take care of, i.e., assassinate, a disgusting old man. This one probably takes at least an hour. We can type restore to resume a saved game, or start to begin a new game. If it's been a while since you played the first Little Match Girl game, type recap. I am using a new hardware setup today. I'm hoping this is going to be less frustrating to listen to than it has been with my headset. The headset introduced a lot of extraneous noise, but the downside of my new equipment is I'm not really familiar with how to configure it properly, so there's a possibility we may pick up extra noise from typing or things of that nature. So instead of being a flaw in the hardware I'm using, it's a flaw in the environment in which I'm recording. So that's something to be aware of. But let's go ahead and recap. In The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen, a nameless little girl was forced by her cruel father to sell matches in the street, in the horrible cold of New Year's Eve. On the verge of freezing to death, the little girl manifested an ability to travel through time and space whenever she looked at fire. This discovery led to her adoption by the renowned philanthropist Ebenezer Scrooge, who christened his new daughter Ebenezabeth. Since that fateful night, Ebenezabeth has learned to leverage these strange powers in her new occupation as a time-traveling assassin. Now you're up to speed. So, let's begin with start. It was winter again, and the good old city had again grown cold and dreary, and the white snow had been churned into muck beneath many boots and carriage wheels. The sky, so full of clouds, hung very low over those streets, and was suffused with the yellow-orange of 1,000 burning lamps. A little girl walked beneath those lamps, stepping lightly over the mud puddles, carrying a revolver, and when she came to the doorway of a certain building, she stomped the snow from her boots and opened the door. The room inside was dark. Stairs. The little girl stood in a little room at the bottom of the stairs. The bustle of the city could still be heard outside, but she heeded it not. A whimper of awakening rose out of the darkness, and then a little brown cat padded toward her, uttering a series of inquisitive mewls. I will examine the cat. The cat, which had been so thin when the two creatures first met, had grown to a healthy size, as had its owner, and no longer insisted on being carried from place to place like an infant. Let's examine Ebenezabeth. The little girl's long flaxen hair hung in pretty curls around her throat. Her name, though it had been her name for barely a year, was Ebenezabeth Scrooge. If we try to sing, she had no desire to begin singing, for her father would be sure to join in, and this she wished to avoid, though she did love the old man dearly. I am, with my new microphone, it has a designated audio output port that I don't actually have a set of headphones that work for it, so I'm stuck using earbuds today. I'll be picking up a proper pair of headphones tomorrow to use in the future, but it's going to make listening to this a little bit of a challenge for me because despite using earbuds for most of my life, for most of my audio purposes. I really don't enjoy them very much and haven't basically ever, but they always still seemed preferable in many ways to headphones. And I'm finally coming around to actually using headphones since I've had to adopt a headset for work. Let's try. Well, let's go ahead and look again, even though we've just gotten the room description. The little girl stood in a little room at the bottom of the stairs. Okay, the bustle of the city could still be heard outside, but she heeded it not. The little girl's cat stood nearby. Let's listen. She heeded not the bustle nor the hustle. And let's examine the stairs. The stairway was dark, but the little girl had come to know each step very well. Then let us go up. The girl took a step upon the first of the old stairs, and it creaked mightily, as it always did and always would. The sound could be heard throughout the building. From above came a voice responding. "Is that you, little girl?" "It is me, Papa, as you well know," the little girl called out, and then she ascended the rest of the staircase, her little cat following silently. Apartment. Though the little girl's father was possessed of much wealth, the rooms his little family shared were by no means luxurious, for he had resolved to devote all but a fraction of his fortune to innumerable acts of philanthropy. However, he considered the adoption of this little girl to be one of these acts, and so felt entirely justified in lavishing as many favors upon her as the bounds of good sense would allow. At present, the little girl's father was seated at the small dining table, spreading his arms to present his daughter with a birthday cake. "Happy birthday!" the old man squealed, and the little girl beamed, for she well appreciated the warmth of a father's love. But still she corrected him. "Adoption Day," she said softly, and her papa nodded, and said, "Of course, of course." And then he remembered something. "Before we can avail ourselves of this confection, there is some business you must attend to. Some visitors are waiting for you." He indicated the stairway. "Up there." The little girl nodded. I will examine Ebenezer. He was an old man with a pointed nose and wiry chin. Many had observed that he better looked the part of the little girl's grandfather than her father. But the law does not allow for the direct adoption of a grandchild absent an intervening generation. Thus, legally and factually, Ebenezer Scrooge was the little girl's father. If we examine the cake, it was quite an impressive cake, though in the French style there wasn't much of it. Okay. And the table? The table could only seat two, but it had been determined that this was quite sufficient, since the cat was content to take its meals on the nearby floor. I wonder if we can actually examine the floor. We can't see that, or it's not implemented. And then let's talk to Ebenezer. "You had better go upstairs," said the little girl's father. "Your visitors have been waiting some time to meet with you." So, up we should go. The little girl climbed up the stairs, and her little cat followed. Roof. A blanket of snow lay over the roof and along the parapet, where a group of sparrows perched, shivering impatiently. All around was the city, fading slowly from sight as the night deepened, and above was the dark sky. Looking at that sky, the sky was all one cloud, tinged orange by the lights of the city below. And the city? London was falling asleep little by little, and certain corners of it would still be awake and active when the sun rose and tomorrow came. And then let's examine the parapet first. A low wall surrounded the roof, too low really to be safe, but the little girl was very wise and knew that she must be careful. And here are our sparrows. There were 5 sparrows in all. One was crowned with a white pole. This clearly was the oldest and appeared to wield some authority over the others. "How do you do?" the little girl asked. "We are very cold," the eldest sparrow said bluntly. "We have a job for you, little girl. Are you the little girl with whom we made our appointment, Ebenezer Scrooge? Yes, yes, then we do have a job for you. There is a certain someone you must take care of." "Kill, kill!" chirped one of the other birds. The senior sparrow gave this upstart a reproving peck. "Don't be crass. Take care of is how we put it. A certain someone, as I was saying, an old man, older even than I." "Has this man a name?" asked the little girl. "Not a conventional name, no, but he is unmistakable. You will know him in an instant. He is so very old. His hair lies in a few wisps over his head like a cobweb. His face is furrowed with 1,000 wrinkles. His teeth! His teeth!" The elder delivered another peck upon the interrupting sparrow. "Yes, his teeth are only little yellow stumps. You will recognize him at once if he happens to smile at you." "And you wish for me to take care of this man? Are you quite certain?" asked the little girl. "Yes! We have waited long enough. The business cannot be put off any longer." "Too late! Too late!" the incorrigible sparrow wailed. "No, not too late," said the little girl. "Not if I get right to work." "Then go, 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 go!" All the younger sparrows began to chirp at once, and the elder was forced to peck all of them to make them quiet down. So you shall recall that the very first Little Match Girl game took place on New Year's Eve. We are 1 year later, so this is once again New Year's Eve, if that gives a clue as to the identity of this old man we are to take care of, who is imminently to have outlived his allotted time span. So we are supposed to get right to work. We have with us our revolver. The little girl carried a long, heavy revolver, which had been manufactured in America. The steel was engraved with curling designs that looked like leaves or else like flames. It was engraved, too, with a message, "For my friend, Ebenezer, Samuel Colt." Try talking to the sparrows again. "I will begin at once," said the little girl. "What about your fee?" asked the eldest sparrow. She waved the question aside. "You may take that up with my father," she said. So, we should go down to the apartment again. The little girl's father sat at a small dining table, upon which sat a handsome birthday cake. As the little girl entered, the old man was engaged in inserting a birthday candle into the center of the cake. "I'm afraid I overheard most of your discussion," he said, striking a match. "As I understand, the mission is somewhat urgent." "I'm afraid so," said the little girl. He nodded. "Not to worry. We can start enjoying this cake as soon as you've returned." He brought the match against the candle, and presently a warm red flame rose from its wick. With this accomplished, the old man tossed the match out of the way somewhere. So, if we examine the candle, we can truly start upon our journey. The little girl leant over the candle, and its warmth touched her cheeks, and its light filled her eyes. How they twinkled in that dim apartment! And how shadowy all the world around appeared, compared against the light of this candle. The dining room, the building, and indeed all of London seemed to fade away. Hans Christian Andersen, in association with Inform 7 version 10.1.2/D and Vorpal version 4.0.1, presents a Ryan Veeder production. Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Match Girl 2, Annus Evertens. Olympia, Greece. Street. At least it's nice and warm out. A spring day. A gravel road flanked by olive trees. There's a tent set up in the middle of the street, but that doesn't seem to be a problem, as there isn't any traffic. Sounds like all the action is east of here. Let's examine this road. The street is dirty gravel between two dirty stone curbs. And actually, let's take a moment to just appreciate that opening, because that was the moment when I was like, yeah, okay, these games are doing something pretty wild, and I'm excited to see where this goes. And the rest of this game really paid off that first moment of real excitement and intrigue, because I really like some of the places this game goes. We examined the trees. Some of these trees are ancient. Some of them are clearly not so ancient. And the tent. The sides of the tent go all the way to the ground. You can't see what's going on inside, but it's pretty clear where the entrance is. Well, let's go ahead and go into the tent. There's nobody here. The tent's drapery muffles all the sound outside. You are quite alone. A white dress is hanging from a rack. If we examine the dress, a sleeveless full-length gown with as many pleats as humanly possible, tied around the waist with a very long white cord. We're probably coming back to this dress, but for now, let's go out and try to go east. To Philippeon, a circular platform is raised above the gravel. On one side, there are still a few ionic columns standing, and the marble floor is still in evidence. Other than that, all that remains of the monument are its rough stone foundations. A portable table is set up in the middle of the ruin. The path curls around the platform, leading east and west. A crowd of sullen young women are standing beneath what's left of the architrave. I'm going to be mispronouncing a number of Greek words, it seems. Examine the columns. The columns are very nice. You can see how this would have been a very impressive monument if there were more of it here, and it had its roof. The platform is the same. Let's examine this table. It doesn't look very sturdy. On the table is a plate of pastries. A bunch of triangular pastries with something green inside. Can we take them? You take one of the pastries from the plate. Looking closer, you can see the green stuff is spinach. Oh, we cannot smell a pastry, but we can try smelling a pastry. No thanks. Can we try tasting? Not much to be gained by that. Let's eat the pastry. You take a bite out of the pastry and start gagging immediately. But there are people around, so you force the whole thing down. Well, we're not much of a fan of this. I wonder, is this spanakopita? I'm not familiar with the dish other than by reputation, so let's examine this crowd. All the girls are wearing long white dresses. Some of them look impatient. Some of them are merely bored. They all look like they'd rather be somewhere else. We try talking to the crowd. Who are you? One of the girls asks. My name is Ebenezer Scrooge, you say. She nods. Are you a virgin? Asks another, causing you to cough violently. She means a Vestal virgin, the First Lady explains, as in, are you helping out with the ceremony? Oh, I see, you say. I'd be happy to help if you need me. Can never have too many, but you'll have to get dressed first, says the head virgin in charge. So, we do need to get dressed. Let's go back west, in, and wear the dress. First, taking the dress, you change into the dress and tie the cord tight. The waist is very high, but it fits well enough. Now we can go back out and to the east. Okay. So, wonder if we can, if this just redirects back to the platform. The architrave is the horizontal part that spans the top of the columns. Okay. Let's go east. You start walking toward the temple to the east. The women fall into formation around you. You try your best to match their stride, if not their willowness or their sudden stoic confidence. Temple of Hera. The procession of Vestal virgins passes between giant crumbled columns out onto the dust. You hold your breath as you walk. You try to look taller. The Vestal virgins find their places in an arc around the great altar. Then the high priestess arrives, walking slowly, solemnly toward the altar. She stops next to a metal bowl, a parabolic mirror. A silver torch lies in the dust nearby. She raises her arms. Sacred silence! Let the sky, the earth, the sea, and the winds sound. Mountains fall silent, sounds and birdsong cease. For Phoebus, the light-bearer king, shall keep us company. Apollo, she cries. The Vestals kneel. God of the sun and the idea of light, send your rays and light the sacred torch for the hospitable city of Sydney. The high priestess takes a few steps around the mirror, looking each of the Vestals in the eye. She stares at you for a long moment. Then she kneels next to the mirror and lifts the torch, raising its tip into the center of the parabolic mirror. A cloud passes in front of the sun. The high priestess holds her elegant and uncomfortable pose, stretching her arm out to keep the torch steady in the mirror's focal point. The birds start to chirp again. You can't keep kneeling much longer. The high priestess stands, and all the Vestal virgins stand with her. It's not going to happen, she says. Do we have the backup flame? It's in the... I'll go get it, says one long-legged virgin, who begins power-walking away. The Vestal next to you sighs and turns to you with a shrug. That's going to take a while, she says. You might as well stretch your legs some. Glancing around for a place to stretch your legs some, you notice a path leading south. Before we do, though, let's examine the priestess. She's dressed the same as everyone else. There's nothing to distinguish the high priestess from her retinue of Vestals except her incredible poise and her arresting beauty. And she's so tall. In her hand, she bears a silver torch. We examine the torch. The torch is fluted in the manner of a classical column. Its bowl is filled with some sort of flammable material, but it's not burning. We talk to the priestess. As you approach, the high priestess gives you a smile that makes you think the sun has come back out. Thank you so much for helping us out at the last minute, she says. My name's Thalia. It's a pleasure to meet you, Thalia. My name is Ebenezabeth. Ah, not from around here, huh? Well, sorry things didn't really go to plan. She rubs her torchlighting arm. We should be up and running as soon as Irini gets back. We try talking again. There's really nothing to do around here until the backup flame arrives, Thalia tells you. You can have a look around if you want. So if we look, we can talk to the girls again. So what do we do now? You ask the nearest virgin. She shrugs. Wait, I guess? Maybe if I'm desperate, I'll go get some more cold spanakopita. So it is. Okay. Let's look at the mirror. It really just looks like a metal bowl, but it's specifically shaped to focus the sun's reflected rays at a single point. This reminds me, when I was young, my dad got a Fresnel lens, I think they're called. Basically a sheet of plastic that is a collapsed version of a large lens for focusing. It's used for magnification, especially for documents, to make things easier to read or project. But he had used it to construct a burning device that would not use any fuel, and he kept it in our basement with a towel draped over it. And for whatever reason, because I was a kid amused by burning things, like, a real healthy-minded child, I was using it to burn miscellaneous papers and things. And I did not put the towel back over it when I was done with it, and I just thought, oh, it's fine, it's in the shadow in the basement. But our basement had a cellar window, and as the sun moved, the projected light eventually caused the thing to catch on fire, and I nearly burned our house down. It was very fortunate that somebody caught it and put the fire out from the device's wooden structure, and it was only that one thing that burned. Things that burn with just light are powerful if used incorrectly, so it's something to be aware of. But in this case, it's clearly not doing its job, so let's see if we can go find something else to do. Let's go south. Pelopion. All that remains of the Pelopion are a few low stones, overgrown by unkempt grass. The Temple of Hera is north from here. The Temple of Zeus is further south. If we examine the grass, it's just rough brown grass covers the field. And the stones? There's nothing in the shapeless ruin to suggest their original arrangement. Luckily, there's an interpretive placard nearby. Oh, let's examine a placard then. A drawing on the placard shows the Pelopion when it was still in use, a mound of packed earth, the tomb of Pelops, son of Tantalus, surrounded by a stone fence. The accompanying text describes a nocturnal ritual in which a black ram was sacrificed atop the tumulus. Well, let's continue to the south then. Here is the Temple of Zeus. Toppled pillars litter the earth like boulders strewn by a massive earthquake. The steps leading up to the temple are crumbled and uneven. There are outlines where walls and rows of columns once stood, suggesting a grand chamber like a cathedral, but the center of the temple is empty. There's an interpretive placard here as well. Examine this one. The drawings of the temple's original appearance make it look more or less like any other Greek temple. A dazzling luminance fills the air. You stagger, propping yourself up on the interpretive placard. Slowly, the light coalesces into the shape of a human. "No, not a human," it bellows, "but a divinity! Little girl, you stand before Zeus Olympios, king of all the gods." His radiance abates enough for you to look directly at him. He smiles smugly down at you. Well, here's Zeus. Let's examine him. Zeus is a muscular gentleman with a long, curly beard. He's even taller than the high priestess. Let us talk to Zeus. You step forward. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Zeus. My name is Ebenezabeth." "I am well aware, little girl. My brother Poseidon the Earthshaker has told me of your exploits." "That is very flattering." "Flattery? Ha! I have not descended to the plane of base matter that I may engage in paltry human niceties. I am here to wreak revenge upon my brother, Poseidon the Horse-Tamer, by impeding the labors of his champion." "Who is that?" you ask. Zeus snorts. A storm rumbles in the distance. "Feign not your human naivete, little girl. In deep Atlantis and on high Mount Olympus, it is known by all that dark-haired Poseidon has named Ebenezabeth Scrooge his champion in the mortal realm." "I'm sorry, sir. I wasn't informed of this." "It matters not what you were informed of. My sole concern is my brother's vexation. Already this is accomplished." He raises his palms to the heavens. "I have set my cloud in the sky, obscuring the sun, preventing the lighting of the Olympic torch. Without its fire, you cannot continue on your journey. Your dismal failure will reflect poorly on your patron, my arrogant brother, Poseidon, god of the sea. When you return to your master, tell him that I, Zeus, god of thunder, have bested him again." His huge mouth erupts in ear-splitting guffaws, and he disappears in a flash of lightning. So, that's great. We are apparently Poseidon's champion, and Zeus finds this an unbearable state that must be addressed by causing us inconvenience. We continue to look at the temple of Zeus. Let's examine the pillars. The column sections dimly resemble giant stone gears, half buried in the dust. And the temple? Yep, same. Okay. Well, with Zeus having made his pronouncement, let's see if we can go back to meet up with the virgins again. So back to the Pelopion, followed by the Temple of Hera. So, giant crumbled columns stand over the great altar where a metal bowl sits, angled to point at where the sun should be. The high priestess and her retinue of Vestal virgins are here. The gravel path leads south and west. One of the Vestals glances toward the Philippion, and her eyes light up. "Hey, here she comes!" The long-legged virgin from before is power-walking back across the Temple of Hera, carefully carrying a brass bowl containing a flickering candle. Her coworkers erupt in cheers of relief. She kneels next to the parabolic mirror. The high priestess stands over her and raises her torch to the sky. "Apollo," she cries, "god of the sun and the idea of light, send your rays and light the sacred torch for the hospitable city of Sydney." One of the other Vestals whispers to you, "We lit the backup flame with the mirror yesterday, so it still counts." The high priestess lowers the torch toward the bowl. It ignites with an impressive crackle. She raises it again to the sky. "And thou, Zeus, give peace to all peoples on earth, and wreath the winners of the sacred race." The long-legged virgin hurries off to return the backup flame. Someone else is coming. A man in shorts and tennis shoes approaches. He kneels before the high priestess, raising a torch made of plastic and aluminum. The high priestess smiles and lowers her torch to light his. "Go," she says, "and bring victory." The man rises and starts jogging away. Can we still see him? No, he's already gone. Can we see the candle? You can't see that, or it's not implemented. Can we see the torch? Yes. You look up at the torch. Its flames will travel a long way, to Guam, to New Zealand, to Alice Springs, Townsville. And you are traveling too, along the ribbon of time. You are no longer in Olympia. Now you are in Tel Aviv. Dust. You stand in a field of dust, surrounded by crimson fog. Nearby is a massive pillar. Now you see more pillars, stretching in all directions, rising into the red mist. You think you can make out vague shapes to the southwest. This is a cool area. So, we are in a field of dust, crimson fog. Check out the fog. The mist seems to possess its own faint luminance, suffusing the world with a dull, feeble warmth. Let's check out that pillar. Craning your neck, you can barely discern the shape at the top of the pillar, the 3 vanes of a gigantic windmill. The huge machine is caked in dust, motionless. What's those shapes about? Well, whatever they are, they're over to the southwest, so let's go that direction. Field. Long rows of black mirrors, photovoltaic cells. Most of the panels are cracked or warped. Rough trails lead northeast, southeast, and west through the dust. If we examine the cells, the solar panels are pointed up into a sunless sky. Some have been smashed, others seem to have partially melted. Each glass presents the same reflection, of nothing at all. A withered cable protrudes from beneath each unit. Examining a cable, you try to follow one of the cables through the dust briefly before dismissing the errand as pointless. Trying to model the following of something like a cable in interactive fiction is kind of challenging because it's not great. I guess you can kind of have it direct you in a particular direction, but it's something of a challenge, I feel. Let's check the sky one more time. Yeah, okay, it's just the same as the fog from before. So if from here we have trails to the northeast, southeast, and west, we came from we walked southwest, so we came from the northeast. Let's go southeast first. A huge Tyrannosaurus emerges from the mist. Its jaws... Oh, it's only a statue. Monument. A statue of a T-Rex stands on a basalt pedestal, posed in a triumphant roar. In front of the dinosaur is a black brazier. There seem to be things west and northwest from here. If we examine the statue is recognizable at a glance, but when you get a good look, you see it doesn't quite resemble the real thing in all the wrong ways. So we know, thanks to having played through the Battle of Grey Peaks, that Evertens has quite a lot of experience with dinosaurs in their original forms, so she should know what a T-Rex would look like if it were portrayed correctly. At the time that this game was originally created, though, that adventure did not yet exist, so it's kind of an amusing joke that at this point we are finding out, oh, she knows what T-Rexes look like. That suggests she's had some adventures that are yet to be portrayed, or that we're going to have to imagine for ourselves, which is kind of a running theme of the Little Match Girl games, is that we get to see some of Ebenezabeth's adventures. We get to see some of the major points of conflict in her life, but she clearly gets up to a lot more than just what is portrayed in the games. We have to engage on a sort of campaign of reconstruction in our mind of just the scope and the shape of the journeys that she takes, because there are many chapters that are omitted, and so we must infer what those could contain. And there's a lot of amusement to be had there, depending on the clues that we receive like this. If we examine the brazier, a broad, flat pan sits atop a plinth of black marble. Inside is a puddle of brownish liquid. Affixed to the plinth is a plaque. This brazier shall forever burn in honor of the dinosaurs. Except it's not burning at the moment, so I guess that's not entirely accurate, but so be it. Let's go west from here. Facility. The city is mostly rubble, but this one building remains more or less intact. The dust-choked street turns from northwest to east. Let's examine this building, then. Only the word facility hangs over the double doors. If there were another word at some point, it's gone now. A rusty trash can stands near the entrance. We examine the trash can. A cylindrical container covered in rust. The lid is closed. We open it. The can and its lid are almost fused together by rust. You keep pulling until it finally opens, with such violent force as to knock you backward and make the ancient receptacle clatter noisily on the concrete. "Ow!" a voice exclaims from inside the trash can. You lean over to look inside. At the bottom of the can is a grimy cyber skull. It looks back up at you. "Hey there, little girl! Could you get me out of here?" So you pick it up. Well, we have a cyber skull. Let's examine it. It's covered in circuits and gadgets of unknown names and functions. The original skull beneath these enhancements appears to be more or less human. And more or less animate? We talk to the skull. It's important to be polite. You ask the cyber skull, "What is your name?" "In life, I was called Jackson," it says. The components of its jaw scrape against each other, producing little sparks. "Nowadays, no name. What about you?" "Ebenezabeth." The skull makes an impressed clicking noise. Well, the skull with no name. We talk to him again. "What happened here?" you ask. "The world ended, Ebenezabeth." Its jaw shoots out more sparks. "The sun went away and everybody died." "Oh," you say. We try talking again. "Have a look around," the cyber skull says. Sparks fly out of its jaw as it talks. "I can be your tour guide. This is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in ages." You thank the skull for its assistance. So, something that I particularly enjoy in interactive fiction games is like the main action that we perform in the vast majority of games is to examine things. You look at your environment, you learn what is around you, and that determines how you will go about interacting with the world. And so, like, in many ways, examining things feels like the fundamental action. You can move, you can do things, but really examining things is the number one activity. And so sometimes a game will introduce a new way to examine, or will in some way modify the experience of examining something. So if we examine the trash now that we've got the cyber skull, a cylindrical container covered in rust. The lid is open. You ask the cyber skull how it ended up in there. The rest of my body and me had a little disagreement, you could say, and the way we parted ways was less than amicable, you could say. You nod. So now we've got somebody who's going to comment on the environment around us. So I just think that's great. I love the cyber skull because it's we get to get more out of everything we've seen. So if we examine the facility now, only the word facility hangs over the double doors. If there were another word at some point, it's gone now. A rusty trash can stands near the entrance. This was the city's fossilization facility, the cyber skull explains. A lot of brave people walk through those doors. Selfless people. Not me, though. What do you mean, you ask? It sighs. We were desperate, see? The whole planet was. We needed a source of energy. You have to understand, we tried everything else first, but nothing worked. You get it? You nod hesitantly, and the skull continues. So we finally resorted to human fossilization. We turned each other into fuel. And we didn't force anybody into it. That's the thing. There were plenty of volunteers. They sacrificed themselves so that the rest of the world could continue on. It sighs. But it wasn't enough, or it was too late, or, well, just look around. It didn't work. The world ended anyway. So that's, a portrait of the bleak future apparently awaiting us if we continue on as the world is apparently directed. Human fossilization as a source of power. That's, anything will do in a pinch, I guess. So what else is there? The city is mostly rubble, but this one building remains more or less intact. The dust-choked street turns from northwest to east. Check out those ruins, the Cyber Skull says. So he'll even point out things to examine. So if we look at the ruins, the buildings seem to have fallen over from sheer exhaustion. This is what remains of the mighty city Tel Avite, says the Cyber Skull. It never was that nice of a place, to be honest. So I'm going to try and make a circuit of the areas we have not gone, and then end our journey in the areas we have revisited. So we could go northwest from here. Overlook. The scene below is barely visible through the fog. A huge wall stretches across the width of a canyon. It's a dam. One side is meant to be a reservoir, but there's no reservoir, no river, no water. The canyon is empty on both sides. The trail goes east and southeast. The Cyber Skull tries to get a look at the distant machines. Oh, we'll take that cue and examine the machines. The machines are shrouded by the omnipresent red fog. I think those doodads are what turned the water into electricity, the skull explains. Let's check out the dam. The wall is hundreds of feet tall, maybe a mile across. Machines covered its surface like patches of lichen. Hydroelectric power, the Cyber Skull sneers. You know how the water cycle works? It flows out to the ocean, then it evaporates. Then it rains down so it can flow out to the ocean again. But guess what? If there's no sun, nothing evaporates. So it stops raining. So the river stops flowing. So the dam stops working. It grinds its teeth, producing a shower of sparks. So, water cycle's broken. Let's examine the canyon. The canyon walls are decorated with sinuous striations, carved by fast-flowing water over millions of years. But the patterns are marred by more recent markings. Giant gashes, claw marks. The Cyber Skull gazes over the scene longingly. I remember when there was a river here, actually. I was just a little kid back then. It sighs and sparks shoot out of its mouth. I still had skin. It's something to be nostalgic about, I guess. Let's see the gashes. The tracks of a gigantic beast. Oh yeah, says the Cyber Skull. Make sure you watch out for wanderers. So, that's ominous, I guess. What else? We have examined on the huge... that's just the wall. The wall is just the dam. We've seen the canyon. There's no reservoir, no river, no water. Canyon's empty. Can we examine the trail? No, we cannot. Well, we just came from the east. So we just came from the southeast, so we go east now. Field. Long rows of black mirrors, photovoltaic cells. Most of the panels are cracked or warped. Rough trails lead northeast, southeast, and west to the dust. Oh, look at those cables, says the Cyber Skull. So we examine the cables. You try to follow one of the cables through the dust briefly before dismissing the errand as pointless. Yeah, don't bother, says the Cyber Skull. We look at a panel. The solar panels are pointed up into a sunless sky. Some have been smashed, others seem to have partially melted. Each glass presents the same reflection, of nothing at all. A withered cable protrudes from beneath each unit. The Cyber Skull shakes its head sadly. They called it renewable energy, you know? They said it'd last forever. But that's not how it works. Furious sparks erupt from its mouth. There are laws of thermodynamics. Nothing's free. If you keep using the sun's energy, eventually you use it all up. And now there is no sun. How long did it last, you ask? I don't know exactly when this renewable energy thing started, the Cyberskull chuckles. I'm not quite as old as I look, you know. But this right here is the year 3030 AD. So that gives us a time frame from today. That's about, 1,006 years, 1,005 years. So, grim. But I'm pretty sure that while the laws of thermodynamics are correct and that there is not really a sense of renewable energy, I don't think using solar energy means using up the sun. I think the sun has its own timetable. But for the sake of the amusement of the situation, I think we'll let that point go. We should look also at the sky. Okay, he doesn't have any comment on the sky or the fog. Yeah, so we should go northeast to dust. You stand in a field of dust surrounded by crimson fog. Nearby is a massive pillar. In the distance are more pillars arranged with eerie regularity, disappearing into the mist. The array of panels is somewhere to the southwest. The Cyberskull seems very interested in the windmill. We look at the windmill. Craning your neck, you can barely discern the shape at the top of the pillar, the three vanes of a gigantic windmill. The huge machine is caked in dust, motionless. If there's no sun, then there's no wind, the Cyberskull says. Its jaw shoots out several sparks. I don't really understand why it works that way, but I believe it because I've seen it happen. Okay. What else is here? Can we examine more pillars? There seem to be dozens of the towers standing silently in the dust. Okay. What about the dust? The field is red and dry, almost chalky. Okay. I guess that's what we have here. Does the Cyberskull comment on himself? No? Let's show the skull our dress. The dress is of no concern to the Cyberskull. Can we show the revolver to the skull? Nope, that's of no concern to him either. So, while he is a character, he behaves more like an inventory item for our purposes. He's not like a usual character in a little Match Girl game who would have comments on the things that we carry and can show them. So, I think we can go southeast of the monument. And the skull is very excited to look at the brazier. Oh, look at that brazier, says the Cyberskull. So we examine the brazier again. Once again, that was the broad, flat pan that sits atop a plinth of black marble. Inside is a puddle of brownish liquid. Affixed to the plinth is a plaque. This brazier shall forever burn in honor of the dinosaurs. The greatest creatures ever to walk the earth, the Cyberskull buzzes reverently. The human race was like a pile of wet puppies in comparison. And the stuff the mammals did accomplish, they never could have done without fossil fuels. So if you think about it, dinosaur worship is really the only religion that makes sense. A few sparks fly out of the skull's mouth. Yeah, I'm sold. Certainly. If we examine the T-Rex himself, the Cyberskull looks up at the beast and whistles, spitting out a shower of sparks. And we can't look at things. It's not up to him. We can't do that. Okay, well, so the brazier has the brownish liquid. Let's look at that liquid. It looks like cold, sticky coffee. Of course, all the petroleum that came from actual dinosaurs is long gone, says the Cyberskull. This oil probably came out of a Stelevizan who underwent voluntary fossilization. As it speaks, sparks spurt from behind its jaw. So if the sparks haven't been a clue, we are going to be using him as a light source. So let us try lighting the liquid with the skull. This dangerous act would achieve little. Can we put the skull in the brazier? You put the skull on the brazier. So now we talk to the skull. Hey, thanks for lugging me around, says the Cyberskull. I didn't realize how aboard I was. As it speaks, its cybernetic enhancements grind against each other, shooting sparks through the air. One of the sparks lands in the dark liquid. There's a flash of light, and now the cyber skull is on fire, bright flames licking at its circuitry. Wow, it says. First time that's happened. Well, that's a little concerning. I guess we should talk to the skull and see if he's okay with this state of affairs. You ask the cyber skull if it's okay. It chortles. I sure seem to be. You ain't got to worry about me, Ebenezer. You seem to me like the type of gal who's got plenty to worry about. Fair enough. Well, in that case, if we examine the skull, I think that should now take us elsewhere. The cyber skull notices you looking. I'm fine, it says. I've survived worse. But you're focusing on the fire, bright and red and hot. The heat fills your senses. Now the cyber skull is gone, but the flames are all around you. You feel yourself discorporate, becoming one with the fire. Then the fire subsides and you are inside the terrible dogfish. Mouth. A cavern of flesh ringed with rows of teeth. It is wet in here and dark. Your footing is uncertain. You notice that you are standing on a tongue. Something is swaying back and forth in the air, glistening like a ghost. That's a little concerning. What is this something here? When your eyes adjust, you understand what you're looking at. This is the creature's uvula. The dark passageway beneath is its throat. Okay. So we are in a terrible dogfish. What happens if we just try to go out? But you aren't in anything at the moment. I think I beg to differ. I think we are very much in something at the moment, but not in something we have the ability to escape. So, let's examine that tongue. The tongue is so wide and so long as to resemble a country road, except that it is pink and spongy and keeps twitching underfoot. And the teeth? Each triangular tooth is taller than you are. Meshed together, they form a ghastly enclosure of serrated bone. Unnecessary extra teeth are growing everywhere, protruding from the gums like shards of glass set in prison walls. This is a very disturbing place to be. Can we enter the passageway? We can. Stomach. A wrecked sailing ship is smashed against one side of the terrible dogfish's immense stomach. The organ is large enough to accommodate 2 or 3 more such vessels. In the middle of the chamber, on the high ground between puddles of acid, is a little table set for dinner. An old man sits on one side. Opposite him is a wooden puppet. So, we have arrived in another setting of folklore, this one being the story of Pinocchio. Let's check out the puppet himself first. A well-made marionette wearing a pointed cap. You can't see any strings attached to him, but he seems to be moving around quite well regardless. Good evening, you say. Is it evening? Asks the old man. He rubs his eyes, drags his hands over his face. I have utterly lost track of time. My father has been trapped in the terrible dogfish's stomach for 2 years, the marionette explains. How awful! You begin wringing your hands involuntarily. Something about this scene is very upsetting to you. Please let me know if I can help. My name is Ebenezer. The old man looks up in sudden alarm. Goodness, where are our manners? My name is Geppetto, and it is a pleasure to meet you, Ebenezer. My son is called Pinocchio. I built him myself. The puppet executes a little bow. Well, we've examined the puppet. Let's examine Geppetto. A little old man with thick glasses. He looks a little younger than your papa, but you aren't the best judge of these things. For dinner, he is having a tiny piece of cheese. We try talking directly to Geppetto. You ask Geppetto if there's anything you can do. This tiny piece of cheese is all the food I have left, he says. I have been eating it, a nibble at a time, for the past year or so. But soon it will be gone, and I will starve, and my son will be an orphan. There is more food inside that wrecked ship, but neither I nor my son have the strength to open any of the crates or barrels. You nod. I'll see what I can do, you say. We can talk to Pinocchio. You ask Pinocchio how you can help. I have few needs, being made of wood, but my father must have something to eat, or else he'll surely starve. We think there may be more supplies farther down inside the terrible dogfish. He gestures across the stomach toward the duodenum. I would go look myself, but there's a ghastly monster living down there, the horrible fluke worm. It would smash me to splinters if I gave it half the chance. I'm sure you could overpower it, though. You notice his nose getting longer as he utters this last sentence. So, we have an antagonist to surpass. What else is here? We should look at the ship. Though obviously no longer seaworthy, the ship is still more or less in one piece, and you could easily climb inside to have a look around. And the table? The table appears mostly undigested. Maybe it was salvaged from the shipwreck. Okay. We have our dress and our revolver. Let's try showing the revolver to Geppetto. It's of no concern to Geppetto. Let's try showing it to Pinocchio. That, showing might... I spelled it wrong. Showing things to people might not be as big a part of this game, since I think we are not going to have the kind of free movements we had in the first game and its spin-off. I can type really well today. Show revolver to Pinocchio. Yeah, it's of no concern to him either. Okay. Let's try enter ship. Shipwreck. The ship's interior is a briar patch of splintered planks dripping with viscous digestive enzymes. Enzymes? A crate, a barrel, and an iron-bound chest are close at hand, all undamaged. They must have been protected by the surrounding hull and bulkheads. Outside is the terrible dogfish's stomach. Examine the crate. The wooden box measures about 3 feet on each side. The lid is closed. We open the crate. The lid is nailed down. You can't pull it off without some sort of leverage. Examine the barrel. It's a very sturdy-looking thing and too heavy to lift. It's closed. If we open it, the cask, or hogshead, or whatever it is jammed shut, and you can't pull the top off with your bare hands. Let's examine the chest. It's a barrel-top chest of the type pirates typically favor. You can see where there used to be a locking mechanism that has since rusted away. We can probably open the chest, at least. You open the chest, revealing a rapier and an oilskin journal. Take the rapier. Oh boy, right. You pick up the rapier. Now it is time to allocate your ability points. You have 12 points, and you can use them to improve any of 7 different stats. Health is how much damage you can take before you die. By default, you have 10 health. Each point you put in this skill will give you 3 more health. Attack determines how much damage you deal with physical attacks. By default, your attack is 5. Defense reduces the amount of damage you take from physical attacks. By default, your defense is 2. Magic determines how much damage you deal with spells. You don't know any spells. By default, your magic is 1. Resistance reduces the amount of damage you take from spells. By default, your resistance is 3. Speed determines the order in which combatants take their turns. The combatant with the highest speed goes first. By default, your speed is 4. Skill determines the likelihood of your attack being a critical hit. You have a skill in 10 chance of scoring a critical hit, which deals 3 times the damage of a normal hit, calculated after applying defense or resistance. By default, your skill is 1. That's a typo. We had the word chance duplicated. Which stat would you like to increase first? So, combat systems are not terribly common in interactive fiction games, but Ryan has flirted with them on a number of occasions. This is the first instance of them appearing in Little Match Girl, if we don't count the Battle of Grey Peaks, which was created later but set earlier. And that was more of a unit-to-unit comparison. There wasn't really an actual factor of stats. It was just this unit defeats this unit. This time around, we're going to have an actual RPG combat system, it would seem. And so here is how I am going to rationalize applying my stats. Obviously, magic is something we should avoid because we don't know any spells. That is of very little benefit. Speed is oftentimes beneficial in games of this type, but the fact that we are going to have turns and all speed does is determine who goes first, to me indicates speed is not as effective as other stats might be. Skill, a multiplier, can be very powerful because we have a 10% chance of a critical hit, and with 1 point, that becomes a 20% chance. So like each increase in, like, it doubles our likelihood on just a single point. So there's not as much, like, there's diminishing returns on skill, but it's very powerful to put a few points into skill relative to other stats. Attack is good, defense is decent, health gives 3. So the question I have, if we start out with 2 defense, if defense is subtracted from attacks, then it would seem health would be more beneficial than defense, because a single point of defense is just 1 increment, whereas a single point of health is 3 increments. If, assuming it's a subtractive, if it works in some form of scalar manner, it's going to be more potent. So that being said, one of the advantages of defense and resistance over health is that they are multiplicative, because you are going to potentially take multiple attacks. So for each time you suffer an attack, 1 point of defense is basically, as long as you take at least 3 hits, defense is equal to health. And if we take more than 3 hits, defense is better than health. Same logic applies to resistance. So defense and resistance could potentially be good if the fight goes long enough, or if there are enough fights. So by this logic, I think I have, how many points again? I have 12 points. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I would like to bring skill to 5. So I'm going to put a point into skill. All right, here are your current statistics. Health 10, attack 5, defense 2, magic 1, resistance 3, speed 4, skill 2. We're going to increase skill again, and again, and again. So now we have a skill in 10, a 5 in 10, a 1 in 2 chance of scoring a critical hit, which means we're going to be hitting a lot, assuming attacks go long enough. Let's bring up defense next. 7 points left. And defense once more. And resistance. So now we have defense 4, resistance 4. Let's go ahead and bring both of those up once more. Let's do attack. Because again, attacks have the same multiplicative effect of doing additional damage. So I'm going to just go ahead and put attack for the rest of my points. Okay, so we have increased our attack to 8, defense of 5, resistance of 5, speed of 4, skill of 5. So I'm hopeful that this will be adequate. Let's look again. We have a rapier. A beautiful sword with an ornate hilt and a long, thin blade. There's only a little bit of rust on it. Okay. The chest had a second object in it. An oilskin journal. So this is really a we've hit our payload in terms of interesting objects for this particular game. Because if we examine this journal, it's a book bound in rugged black leather, tied shut with a little strap. Let's take it. And let's open it. And let's read it. The inside cover of the journal reads, "The Diary of Captain Lily Cassidy, Smuggler, Lover, Polymath." You turn to the first page. "Dear Diary, you were a birthday gift from my current boyfriend, the lamentably romantic Arthur Rose. I laugh as I write down his name. Ha 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 ha! Arthur believes that we are soulmates, destined to sail beneath the sky at the edge of the sea and into the Empyrean ocean of stars, to kiss and fondle each other for eternity. Arthur, you stupid moron, you have not learned of life as I have. Life at sea, a life beset by storms and krakens, in which any moment of languid Frenching could be your last. I have Frenched the mouths of 100 boink buddies, Arthur, and I will French 100 more, if Poseidon wills it. No, I will not be your bride, but I will accept this cute journal you have gifted me. Dear Diary, sorry, I got distracted. Anyway, today is my birthday. I am years old. My favorite color is a reddish brown. My favorite pen is the one I am writing with right now. My favorite food is laudanum. I will write on you more later. There's more on the next page. So yeah, Lily Cassidy's journal is fantastic. I love it. It's great. Let's continue reading. I think we just read the next page. The diary goes on. Dear Diary, it turns out that I do appreciate Arthur's deep and sincere love for me, because without it, he never would have jumped in front of that assegai. That's why I am alive and free to swap spit with whichever of my crewmen I so choose. As a woman in the mid-19th century, a woman in a position of authority, specifically a woman who loves having casual sex with my subordinates, I am keenly aware of the issues of power dynamics and consent, etc., that my behavior entails. I think about this stuff all the time, Diary. I'm a very thoughtful person, generally, and I feel like the more you think, the better you get at thinking. If you think enough, eventually you will be right about everything. I would say that I am getting very close to this goal. Of course, everyone believes that they are right about everything, because believing something is logically identical to believing that you are right about that belief. Of course, reasonable and intelligent people will also respect the possibility that they could be wrong. But even more reasonable and intelligent people will understand that the more reasonable and intelligent you get, the better handle you'll have on whether your beliefs are correct. I figured all this out a long time ago, Diary, but I had never had the time or space to write it down. Until now. Thanks, Diary. This is an amazing bit of philosophical reasoning that I feel like is pretty widespread amongst the great thinkers of our age, and they should perhaps reconsider the certainty with which they expound on some subjects. But that's neither here nor there. Let's keep reading. Dear Diary, today we are sailing into the sea known to be inhabited by a creature known as a terrible dogfish. A dogfish is, of course, a type of shark. This shark is said to be impossibly huge. I have heard that it is a mile long, not including its tail. To me, this seems like a suspicious claim. Most of the times, with real things, in terms of size, there's the sort of bell curve where most things of a type are medium-sized and larger or smaller specimens are rarer in proportion to their deviance from the norm. But the curve is smooth is the main thing. You have all the intervening gradations between the normal thing and the huge or the tiny thing. Now, in my experience, most sharks are about 3 or 4 feet long, and then you have big ones that get up to like 10 feet long, and in very rare circumstances, you see a 20-foot shark that luckily eats both your boyfriends before they find out about each other. But that's the upper limit, again, in my experience at least. But based on that experience, the notion of a shark that's a mile long is very tough to swallow. Usually, when I say this kind of thing, I follow it up with, but I'm glad to be proven wrong, so I don't look arrogant. In this case, though, I would really prefer to be correct. There's more on the next page. Dear Diary, I shouldn't have said anything. It turns out that the terrible dogfish is completely real, and it is completely a mile long. We have been evading it so far by making really tight turns that the terrible dogfish can't follow, but that doesn't give us much of an edge. I've asked the crew to suggest other tricks if they think of any, but they've been really busy evading the terrible dogfish. Sorry, Diary, but I need to use you as a brainstorming tool for just a second. Idea page. Trick dogfish with fake ship. Make ship fly. Detach rear portion of ship. Lizard with tail that falls off. Cover ship in unappetizing substance. That appears to be all the ideas she came up with. There's more on the next page. Dear Diary, I tried to find an unappetizing substance to cover the ship in, but we're not smuggling anything gross at the moment, so we're basically just wearing ourselves out trying to keep away from the terrible dogfish. It's not going well. I can see a lot of my crew are losing their enthusiasm. I can't blame them. The task I have set for them is clearly futile. I failed to present my employees with attainable goals. That's on me. The ship is slowing down and the terrible dogfish is catching up. I guess we should get ready for this. Yeah, it slurped us up. and we're inside its jaws now. The ship is getting beat up pretty bad. Now it's swallowing us. The throat muscles are contracting to force us down into its belly, and in the process, they're squeezing the ship violently. A lot of the guys are crying. You're not being very cool, guys. Now we're in the stomach. I guess we live here now. There's more on the next page. Dear Diary, the crew's blaming me for this admittedly very bad situation of being trapped in the belly of a humongous shark. I admit that I failed to save us from the shark when it did show up, but I don't want to take responsibility for encountering the shark in the first place because, like I explained earlier, it really didn't seem realistic that the terrible dogfish would actually exist. It was totally reasonable of me, is my contention, to act as if the terrible dogfish was just a myth. Which is to say, it would have been unreasonable of me to believe in the terrible dogfish because it was such an unlikely story. This is a case where acting reasonably has had negative effects, but I still believe I made the right choice. A lot of the crew guys don't see it that way. Many people have this problem where they think that if you make a decision and something bad happens, then you made the wrong decision, regardless of the basis on which you made the decision originally. There's probably a name for that. Anyway, if we stay here too much longer, then we will starve to death. There's more on the next page. I really love how savvy Lily is in that she's like recognizing that, yeah, okay, this was a mistake, but I'm going to take responsibility that it was the right decision, even though it was a bad decision. I think it's funny how she sticks to that, which is pretty obvious now that I'm saying it aloud, but let's go ahead and read the next page. Dear Diary, some of these crew guys brought up this idea of resorting to cannibalism really fast. So that's not encouraging. Dear Diary, luckily nobody had to eat each other. One of the non-creepy crew guys, Ibrahim something, came up with an idea to sneak out of the terrible dogfish and escape. It was a really good plan. I wasn't all that attracted to Ibrahim before, but he has moved to the top of my list. The plan worked perfectly, and we have escaped the terrible dogfish. I'm leaving this journal inside the wreckage inside the terrible dogfish's stomach, so that hopefully my words can bring solace to anyone who meets a similar fate. Okay. Read the next page. Dear Diary, now we are in Morocco. We unloaded all that stuff we were smuggling. Because Ibrahim's plan was so good, we didn't have to leave hardly any of our cargo inside the terrible dogfish. Some of our clients were mad about the delay, but there's nothing I can do about that. People are always going to be mad at you for some reason or another, Diary. Eventually, you just have to stop caring. I hooked up with Ibrahim a couple times, but that got old really fast. It turns out Ibrahim is a very intellectual person, and I do not find that attractive. Hold on a second. Don't I consider myself a very intellectual person? Do the qualities I think of as positive about myself strike me as a negative when I see them in other people? Is that a double standard? Gosh, this is giving me a lot to think about, Diary. It is fortunate that I am very, very good at thinking. There's more on the next page. I can't remember if she addresses the fact that she keeps updating this diary despite the fact that it's still here in the dogfish. I'm sure she does, but... Read the next page. Dear Diary, it has now been 6 months since I abandoned you inside the terrible dogfish. I'm afraid I've been very busy. I can be brutally honest with you, Diary. I have no use for you anymore. You met a need of mine, and I don't have that need anymore, so I can stop including you in my life. It would be heartless of me to treat a person in this way, but you are a diary, not a person. You don't have feelings. You're just a book. So I won't feel guilty when I decide that I will never even think about you again, ever again. Sincerely, Captain Lily Cassidy. There are maybe 50 more pages, but they're all blank. So that's probably my favorite reading material in the entire series that I've encountered so far. It's great. So, let's go ahead and look again. Now that we have a rapier, I think we can use that as a prying tool to open these other objects. I'm not 100% sure that a rapier would really work that well for prying in actuality, but I don't know. I think I've encountered rapiers like maybe twice, and I don't know how much modern fencing rapiers really correspond with. I don't know how many characteristics they share with historically used rapiers. Let's open the crate with the rapier. Okay, this isn't going to give you the right leverage. Okay, so that's not the tool. That's fine. The chest should now be open. Yeah. It's empty. Let's look at the planks. There are broken pieces of lumber all over the place. This is a real mess. Let's take a plank. It's not for us to carry around. Okay. Can we take a broken plank? You can't see that or it's not implemented. Okay. Nope. Well, let's go out and get this over with. Stomach. A wrecked sailing ship is smashed against one side of the terrible dogfish's immense stomach. The organ is large enough to accommodate 2 or 3 more such vessels. In the middle of the chamber, on the high ground between puddles of acid, is a little table set for dinner. An old man sits on one side. Opposite him is a wooden puppet. Let's go down. You climb down through the slippery duodenum into the spiral valve. Spiral valve. The intestines of the terrible dogfish is a helical tube or spiral valve, which maximizes surface area for the absorption of nutrients and minimizes the ease with which you can actually move around in here. You can head back to the stomach through the duodenum. There's a crowbar lodged in the villi up ahead. We examine the villi. The walls of the spiral valve are covered in villi, which are little grabby things that digest stuff. And let's examine the crowbar. It's a normal human-sized crowbar. We take it. While you're crawling toward the crowbar, something else is crawling noisily up the intestines, squelching and grunting. Around the bend comes the horrible flukeworm, an eyeless, limbless beast the size of a buffalo. It screeches at you. So, that's troubling. Examine the flukeworm. The flukeworm is a long, writhing tube of yellowish flesh. At one end is a circular mouth hole, surrounded by several rings of pointed teeth. So we've got meat eaters within meat eaters. Let's can we take the crowbar? I think it'll stop us. Yeah, the horrible flukeworm really doesn't want you to get that crowbar for some reason. So it sounds like we are going to fight. Let's just try shooting the flukeworm. The problem with that idea is that if your shot pierced any of the terrible dogfish's internal organs, which it easily could, the terrible dogfish might die with you inside it, and that would be undesirably messy. Also, the dogfish could spring a leak, and you might drown. So, there's a good reason not to shoot in this area. So, let us fight the flukeworm. Oh, we got music again. You get ready to attack. The horrible flukeworm manages to bite you with its hideous mouth. I'm concerned about the volume. Let me see if I can. Okay, I think. Again, I'm still really new at all this, so apologies for the audio. I think I've moved that to a quieter background sound level, and the volume coming through my earbuds was overwhelmingly large. Apologies if a cat makes some noise. They are interested in the microphone. I wish they would not be. Okay. This will be a good lesson to examine once we've finished the stream, and I can check out how my current volume controls compare. So, we get ready to attack. The horrible flukeworm manages to bite you with its hideous mouth. You take 1 damage. You have 9 health remaining. You thrust your weapon into the moist flesh of the horrible flukeworm and deal 5 damage. Let's do it again. You get ready to attack. The flukeworm screeches so loud that your brain hurts and you take 1 damage. You have 8 health remaining. Your mind enters an instant of perfect clarity. You slice valiantly at the horrible flukeworm and it takes 15 damage. The flukeworm utters one last scream before it explodes into a shower of dripping worm chunks. You have triumphed. But then you notice your rapier. The worm's corrosive fluids have all but devoured its blade. You toss it aside. Sometimes it feels like every victory only opens the door to new disappointments. So, okay. That was a lot of effort for a scene that was not very long because I didn't consider the fact that by pumping so much of my statistics into strength and critical hit would make such short work of that fight. And I'm pretty sure that is the only fight in the game. So that was our combat system in Little Match Girl 2. I hope you enjoyed it. We will continue our adventure from here. I'm going to go ahead and turn the background music back up. Maybe not quite as high as before because it was really overwhelming when I was trying to hear things. Which, again, I actually have no idea how to control the volume of my own devices while I am here. No matter which volume controls I was modifying, the music was still just as loud in my ears, so I just pulled my earbuds out. So I've got some study to do if I'm going to continue this using this equipment. Okay. We can now take crowbar and re-examine it. It's a normal human-sized crowbar. Can we go further down? No. The only way out is up. So we go back up. You climb up through the slippery duodenum into the stomach. And let's go into the shipwreck. Now let's open the crate with the crowbar. You push the crowbar under the lid and apply all your weight to the other end. It pops open. Look in crate. In the crate are a pair of leather boots, a waterproof match, and a ball of yarn. Take boots. Take match. We'll definitely need that. Take yarn. Coarse blue yarn. Examine the match. You can tell it's waterproof just by looking, being something of a match expert. That should definitely be the case. Examine the boots. Exactly the type of boots a pirate would wear. Okay. Let's open the barrel with the crowbar. Oh, it's already open. Look in barrel. Interesting. You jam the crowbar under the top of the barrel and pry it off. There seems to be an error in order there. Look in barrel. In the barrel is some salt pork. Salted pork is classic sailor food. However, to you, a little match girl and non-sailor, it is completely disgusting. Okay. So we're probably not going to take any pork. You really can't do more than glance at the pork without gagging. Maybe you could just tell the guys outside that there's food in here? Let's do that. Let's talk to Pinocchio first. You let Pinocchio and Geppetto know about the salt pork you found. They both clap their hands joyfully. Now I won't have to starve, Geppetto cries. And I won't have to be an orphan, says Pinocchio. And the blue-haired fairy won't hold me responsible for my father's death. You tell them exactly where in the shipwreck the barrel of salt pork is, so you won't be obligated to go get it for them. Talk to them again. It's the same. Okay, so let us light our match. You strike the match against a convenient surface, and a flame springs to life at the sulfured end. And we examine the match. The match is burning brightly, lending a warm glow to your dire surroundings. But you focus all your attention on that glow until the universe of the terrible dogfish fades away, and you are in the middle of the ocean of storms. Surface. Rough hills of gray dust roll toward the black sky. Examine the sky. The sky is black. You can't see any stars except the sun. Examine the sun. The sun is a brilliant white flame in the center of the sky, but you can't focus on it for too long. It hurts your eyes. And we examine the ocean. The surface is dust, the color of asphalt, the color of dead ashes. Okay. So. Right, this is a planet, or planetoid, asteroid, something astronomical. Let's go east. You take a few slow steps. Surface, the side of a rocky hill. You go up. You hop a few feet into the air and float slowly back down. There's something moving in the distance. Let's examine something. It looks like a little bug. It's getting closer. Let's go north. You go on walking. Surface, the side of a rocky hill. The thing is definitely some sort of vehicle. It has wheels. We examine the thing. Okay, we can't see that or it's not implemented. Let's just wait. Time passes. There are 2 people riding in it, whatever it is. We go east, more walking. Surface, more dust. Rocks, some craters. The vehicle thing is headed right for you. Well, let's go ahead and wait. Time passes. Now it's close enough that you can see clearly. It's a skeletal sort of buggy with rubber wheels. The 2 riders are wearing shiny space helmets. As they come up alongside you, they slow to a stop and wave politely. "Pardon us, little girl," says one. "We were hoping you could render us a little assistance." "We're lost," is what my friend is trying to say, says the other. "I'm Commander Pete," says the first, "and my insubordinate subordinate here is Alan." "My name is Ebenezabeth," you say, with a small curtsy. Alan gives you a little salute in return. We talk to Pete. "How can I help?" you ask. The commander explains. "Well, we were supposed to inspect the Surveyor 3 probe, which is somewhere around here. But it turns out the 2 smartest men on the face of the moon can't track the dang thing down and drive the rover at the same time," Alan adds. "So we could really use an extra pair of hands if you're not too busy," says the commander. "Yeah, hop on," says Alan. So, let's enter buggy. You mount the rover. We talk to Alan. You ask Alan which way you should take the rover. He and Commander Pete inspect their instruments. That way," he says, waving vaguely. "East, I mean." We examine Alan. Alan is a man in a spacesuit wearing a gilded helmet that makes it impossible to see his face. You can't really tell him apart from Commander Pete. "If you're not sure which way to go, just let us know, and we'll try to get you a heading," Alan offers. So I suspect we'll get a very similar command result from examining Pete. Commander Pete is a man in a spacesuit wearing a gilded helmet that makes it impossible to see his face. You can't really tell him apart from Alan. "So," says Pete, "what reason would a young lady like yourself have to be wandering the Oceanus Procellarum with a Colt in her belt?" "I'm here for more or less the same reason you are, Commander," you explain. "I have a job to do." Alan chuckles. Any reaction by Commander Pete is hidden by his visor. Let's drive east. You must name something more substantial. "Well, let us know if we can help at all," says Alan. "Maybe you can," you say. "I need to find something that's on fire." "No chance of that up here, I'm afraid," Commander Pete tells you. "No atmosphere, no oxygen." You nod. Drive buggy east. Rover, excuse me. Drive rover east. Drive rover? You were already riding the rover. "Well, the sun's on fire," Alan offers. "Incorrect," says Commander Pete. "It's made out of plasma, different state of matter." "Could be close enough," says Alan. "Could be," you say. You think you see Pete shake his head slightly. "Well, since we're on the rover, let's just try going east. Surface, on the rover. More dust, rocks, some craters. The only problem is I can't get a look at the sun. It's very, very bright." "Ah, you don't have a helmet, do you?" Alan asks, although it's quite obvious that you don't. These visors are gold-plated to keep out the really unbearable stuff. Pretty expensive pair of fish bowls. "I can imagine. Could I try one of them on for a moment?" you ask. Pete and Alan look at each other. "I don't think that'd be a good idea," says Alan. "We'd die," Pete explains. Let's keep going east. Just dust and rocks. You seem to have run out of small talk. Let's see what Alan says. You ask Alan which way you should take the rover. They check their instruments. That way, he says, waving vaguely. East, I mean. So we continue east. About... Okay, now he says northeast. Okay. Surface on the rover. Dust, craters, above, blackness. The sun. This is new. A thing is sitting in the dust. There she is, cries Commander Pete. He jumps off the rover and bounces over to the object. Alan takes a moment to thank you for your help before joining him. Is that the probe? You ask. Sure is, young lady. Landed here 2 years before we did. We just gotta... Hold that for me, will you? Commander Pete hands something to Alan. We're gonna strip it for parts, Alan explains. That's a negatory, pilot. We're collecting valuable scientific data for king and country. I thought it was on behalf of the whole human race. Pete shrugs. They take a few minutes doing whatever they're doing. Presently, Pete claps the dust from his gloves. All righty, I think that's everything checked off the old to-do list. Time to head home. The two astronauts walk back to the rover. Say, Ebenezer, says Alan, would you mind terribly driving us back to the lander? Turns out this moon stuff is a lot easier with a third pair of hands. I'd be happy to, you say. So let's see which way Alan says we should go now. You ask Alan which way you should take the rover. He and Commander Pete inspect their instruments. That way, he says, waving vaguely. Northwest, I mean. Let's go 4 times northwest. The side of a rocky hill. There's a giant metal spider here. Does that belong to you two? You ask. You could say that, says Alan. That's the lunar module. Her name's Intrepid, on account of she fills us with trepidation. It's perfectly safe, says Commander Pete. Well, Alan says, we'd better be off. Thanks for all your help, Miss Ebenezer. Yes, thank you. We couldn't have pulled it off without you, the commander says. That's not an exaggeration, Alan adds in a mock whisper. The two men salute you and enter the module. Then Alan climbs back out, bounding slowly over the dust, carrying something in his hands. Look what I found. Turns out we had an extra lying around. This ought to help you. He hands you a space helmet, like the one he's wearing. Thank you, Mr. Allen, you say, smiling. Aw, shucks, don't mention it. He climbs back up into the module, gives you one last salute, and pulls the hatch closed. A sudden explosion makes the moon shake beneath you. The top of the module shoots up into the sky, leaving the descent stage behind. You're alone again. If we examine the descent stage, there's a little white tile stuck to one of the descent stage's legs. If we examine the tile, it's a tiny little thing, not even an inch square. There are 6 images etched into it. A black square, a mostly horizontal line, a geometric arrangement of right angles, a sort of trapezoidal knot shape, a crude drawing that distantly resembles a mouse, and an even cruder drawing of a penis. If we examine this helmet, the helmet is almost spherical. It looks a little silly, but the visor is coated in an incredibly thin layer of gold, which will shield your eyes from all sorts of things that normally you rely on the atmosphere to protect you from. We'll wear the helmet. You drop the helmet over your head. It's way too big for you. You look ridiculous. But considering we're a little girl on the moon, currently wearing a Vestal Virgin's dress, and now a space helmet, ridiculous seems to be the order of the day, so let's take the opportunity to also wear the boots. You pull on the boots. They fit pretty well, actually. Nice. So now that we have our helmet, let us examine the sun. You look up at the sun, a sphere of white fire. You stare into it. You let it fill your mind. No, it's too intense. You have to stop, or you'll faint. But you stop yourself from fainting. You steady yourself. You are in an office. Office. Let's see what we're working with. The room is pretty dim. The only light is from outside. There's a lot of stuff in here. Shelves, desk, display case. How about this? We'll divide it into 4 walls. North, east, south, west, and the floor. When last I played this game, which was pretty close to the time of its original release, so it's been a couple years now. This is the room that I had to stop playing in because I ran out of time for my gaming that day and had to leave for an appointment. And I just never got back around to it. So I have never played through the solution to this room. I think I've watched a Let's Play of someone solving it in the past, but that's also been quite some time since that happened. So let's see if we can get through it ourselves this time. And this is a room that, when I realized what this room was, really cracked me up the first time around. Let's examine the north wall. A tall bookcase is pressed against the north wall. There are 5 shelves, which, starting from the bottom, we will refer to as the first or bottom, second, third, fourth, and fifth or top shelf. Let's examine the bottom shelf. The bottom shelf of a bookcase. On the first shelf is a rosewood box, closed. We open the rosewood box. You open the rosewood box, revealing an ape figurine, a boar figurine, a cat figurine, a cow figurine, a deer figurine, a goat figurine, a sheep figurine, and a wolf figurine. Examine ape. A goofy ape carved out of wood, standing on a square platform. Examine the boar. A nasty-looking boar carved out of wood, standing on a square platform. Examine the cat. A cute little cat carved out of wood, sitting on a square platform. Examine the cow. A slender cow carved out of wood, standing on a square platform. Examine the deer. A stately deer carved out of wood, standing on a square platform. Examine the goat. A graceful goat carved out of wood, standing on a square platform. Examine the sheep. A rugged sheep carved out of wood, standing on a square platform. And examine the wolf. A sinister wolf carved out of wood, sitting on a square platform. That was just the first shelf. There's 4 more shelves, and there's 4 more walls with their own sets of nonsense to get through. This is an escape room. This is ridiculous. When I first saw this, I couldn't believe it. Because obviously escape rooms are popular settings to adapt for games, but it's usually the game itself is an escape room. And I think this is the first time, like, I remember a game portraying an escape room as you would encounter one in the real world, the place you go specifically to solve puzzles. So, of course, since those exist in the world, they can be portrayed in a game that portrays the world. I thought it was hilarious and perfect. So let's examine the second shelf. The second shelf of a bookcase. There is nothing on this shelf. Examine the third shelf. The third shelf of a bookcase. On the third shelf are a green vase and a short note. We examine the note. A small piece of pink paper which reads, "At least 2 consonants are side by side." I am going to make a note to that effect. At least 2 consonants are side by side. Okay. Examine the vase. A ceramic vase glazed with a few different shades of green, handmade by a talented amateur. Look in vase. It's empty. Look under vase. On the bottom of the vase is the artist's insignia, the initials BV. Okay. Always interested in V initials in Ryan's games because he is Ryan Veeder, so one wonders if they are alluding to either himself or a familial relation. Examine the fourth shelf. The fourth shelf of a bookcase. On the fourth shelf is a typewritten poem. We examine it. The poem Ogabilis by Clark Ashton Smith is typed out here. In billow-lost Poseidonis, I was the god Ogabilis. My 3 horns were of similor above my double diadem. My one eye was a moonwan gem found in a monstrous meteor. Incredible far peoples came, called by the thunders of my fame, and fleetly passed my terraced throne, where Titan pards and lions stood, as pours a never-lapsing flood, before the wind of winter blown. Before me many a chorister made offering of alien myrrh, and copper-bearded sailors brought from isles of ever-foaming seas enormous lumps of ambergris and corals intricately wrought. The rest of the poem is on the back of the page. Read back of page. Read back. The last two stanzas are typed on the back. Below my glooming architraves, one brown eternal file of slaves came in from mines of Chalcedon and camels from the long plateau, laid down their sardine peridos, their incense and their cinnamon. But now within my sunken walls the slow blind ocean serpent crawls, and sea worms are my ministers, and wondering fishes pass me now, or press before mine eyeless brow, as once the thronging worshippers. Clark Ashton Smith was the author whose writings inspired the Little Match Girl in the Court of Maldweb, if I'm remembering the title correctly. So here we have his actual writing. So he is both a writer in the world of the Little Match Girl, as well as the progenitor of concepts that embody the world of the Little Match Girl. We were looking at the north wall. This was the fourth. Let's look at the top shelf. On the fifth shelf is a laminated notice. Read notice. The laminated notice reads, "The Minnesota Escape Room Fairness Act, or MRFA, requires all in-person interactive puzzle entertainment attractions to provide a complete list of red herrings, items within the attraction that do not bear useful puzzle-solving information or contain information-bearing materials. Patrons of this attraction are advised that they may safely ignore the following items: green vase, mysterious 14-sided die, angel statuette, jar of almonds." Fair enough. Okay. Let's examine the east wall. Actually, I'm going to copy this into my notes first. Okay. East wall. A windowless steel door is set in the east wall. There's a curious mechanism attached to the door. There's also an incredibly detailed painting hanging from the same wall. This painting, oh my goodness. First, let's examine the mechanism. The mechanism is a sort of shield-shaped thing with 5 circular indentations, each about 3 inches in diameter. Circular indentations. Okay. Yeah, okay. Let's look at the painting. This appears to be Summer Afternoon by the infamous Leland Dyke, beloved of jigsaw puzzle manufacturers. Dyke always crams his canvases with an exhausting amount of detail, an approach that he calls encyclopedic and many critics call kinophobic. Summer Afternoon depicts an English manor house and its surrounding gardens. It's kind of sticking out from the wall in what I would describe as a suspicious way. Over the last couple of years, my wife has gotten really into jigsaw puzzles, so our residence is full of puzzles of exactly this style, the overflowing with objects and detail and just little vignettes upon vignettes in the kaleidoscope of nonsense. It's kind of overwhelming sometimes, but it does make the puzzles easier to solve, I have to say. They're a lot easier than more simple. Like, we have this one puzzle that's just, it's a skeleton on a white background. It is the hardest puzzle I have ever seen that isn't like just blatantly playing unfair with extra pieces or with no edge pieces, things of that nature. As traditional jigsaw puzzles are concerned, this skeleton puzzle is brutally difficult. Let's examine the manor house. A pleasingly symmetrical brick building, its front door framed by white columns. An automobile sits in the driveway. We examine the automobile. The car's design places the painting in a very vague mid-century time period. Its driver, a well-dressed drunk, has fallen asleep at the wheel, a bouquet of roses falling from his grip. Examine the roses. The flowers are only mostly in the drunkard's hand. In another instant, they will fall on the ground outside his automobile. We look at the drunkard. This gentleman meant to attend the party, but didn't even reach the front door. The intended recipient of his bouquet is in for a disappointment. We examine the steel door. We'll examine the front door. The front door is open, revealing the foyer within. A sleepy dog is curled up on the threshold. Examine the sleepy dog. The guard dog is doing a poor job of guarding. Anyone could step over it through the front door into the foyer. Examine the foyer. A luxurious carpet runs the length of a foyer, drawing visitors toward a huge landscape displayed on the far wall. The staircase is shadowy and foreboding. We examine the carpet. The red carpet is decadently plush. It leads straight to the landscape, as if to lead people away from the staircase. Well, I am prone to look at the staircase first, then. A dark staircase leads up to the second story of the mansion. Its polished wooden banister catches the light in an odd way. Examine the banister. Though the rest of the staircase is shadowy, the banister shines eerily, drawing your eye up to the second story. So, the second story. A long hallway runs from the staircase to the master bedroom. Bizarrely, a dove can be seen flying down the hall. We examine the dove. The dove is flying from the master bedroom toward the staircase. Its significance is not immediately obvious. Let's check out that master bedroom, then. In the master bedroom of the old manor house, an apple sits abandoned on a table. A candle, just extinguished, fills the air with a long trail of white smoke. A white-haired man lies in bed with a knife in his chest, life fading from his eyes. Oh, well, let's examine the knife. A short kitchen knife for paring apples, but long enough to kill the man who stands on the border between life and death in the instant depicted by this painting. We examine the man. The man lies in bed with a look of shock on his face. His spectacles have fallen to the floor. His pocket watch is open in his hand, as if to record the hour of his demise. We examine the pocket watch. The face of the watch is turned so that you can easily see. The time is 2:30. We examine the spectacles. With the tiniest brush in the world, Leland Dyke has painted minuscule cracks in the spectacles that have crashed to the floor beside the bed of the murdered man. I am always puzzled by the spelling of minuscule. I feel like I'm never convinced it's spelled correctly, even when I'm looking at it spelled correctly. It's telling me that this is misspelled, even though I'm pretty sure this is a perfectly valid spelling, because all language is invented and they're thus subservient to our own intentions. But it looks spelled wrong to me. I feel like there should be a double U, like an extra U, even though any more than one U also seems wrong to me. I hate the word just because of that. Okay, so let's look at the bed. The dying man lies in a regal four-poster bed. His spectacles have fallen on the floor nearby. Look at the... We already looked at the pocket watch and the spectacles in the bed and the knife and the man. Let's look at the candle. The candle has just been blown out, perhaps as someone rushed by, perhaps in an attempt to escape, perhaps after plunging a knife into that man's chest. How about the apple? A single slice has been cut from the apple, no doubt with the knife that currently occupies the torso of the dying man nearby. Okay. I think we have exhausted the upstairs of the upper floor of the manor. Let's look at the manor house again. Its front door framed by white columns. We look at the columns. The columns near the front door are spotless. Those off to the sides of the mansion are crumbling a little, with which we must assume is the artist's attempt at some sort of symbolism. Looking at the front door again, revealing the foyer within. A sleepy dog is curled up on the threshold. We're looking again at the foyer. A luxurious carpet runs the length of the foyer, drawing visitors toward a huge landscape displayed on the far wall. Looking at the carpet. The red carpet is decadently plush. Okay, so the landscape. A painting within a painting, this one a country scene with windmills and lazy sheep. The fiery sunset is the same red color as the carpet. A heavy door stands next to the canvas. We look at the heavy door. The door opens upon the lounge. We examine the lounge. Maybe the family would call it the smoking room. There are comfortable chairs and red stained glass windows. A marble table sits between two couches. A solemn grandfather clock overlooks the scene. Look at the marble table. A game of chess stands unattended on the table. Examine the game of chess. It looks like white's in trouble, but there's no one around to help. The lounge is empty. And the grandfather clock. That is not grandfather clock. The clock indicates the phase of the moon, the region of the zodiac in which the sun rejoices, and the current time. It is 2:30. Okay. Let's zoom back out again. This appears to be summer afternoon. Let's look at the gardens. The manor gardens are the venue of a lively party on this summer afternoon. The lady of the house strides among her guests, inviting all to admire the flowers and topiaries. Let's start with those topiaries. The shrubs have been cut variously into spheres, cones, and hemispheres. The gardener is hard at work even now, pruning a cube. We examine the gardener. The gardener has eyes only for his work, and in return he is ignored by all. By the lady of the house, by the butler, and by all the guests. First I've heard of a butler. Ooh, you can't see that or it's not implemented. There's an error. The butler? Nope. Okay, well, let's look at the lady instead. The lady of the house is followed closely by her butler, but her attention is focused on her many guests. Her crimson dress is as vibrant and as ornamented as any bed of flowers. And we look at the guests. It appears that every member of high society in this nameless English town is in attendance. The men are in one group, chatting stoically. The women are crowded around the lady of the house, vying for her attention. The children are given over to chaos. We examine the children. The children can't agree on a game. They cavort and sneer and cartwheel aimlessly. A few have disappeared into the hedge maze. Examining the hedge maze. A devious labyrinth full of blind corners and dead ends and deceptive switchbacks. Your eyes are starting to hurt. Yeah, I should imagine. Examine blind corners. In such a circuitous maze, any turn could lead you back where you started, or into a dead end. We look at the dead end. A maze can be understood as consisting almost entirely of dead ends, but as you struggle to find your way out of this painting, you seem to have found a false dead end. Ooh. We find the false dead end? An almost invisible path through the hedges opens on a secret garden. We examine the secret garden. None of the guests have discovered this spot. You, the little girl looking down on the scene from outside the painting, have it all to yourself. A pear tree grows in the corner. In the center is a simple sundial. We examine the pear tree. The pear tree provides shade to the secret garden's visitors, but its shadow does not extend to the sundial. We look at the sundial. The gnomon's shadow falls directly between the emeralds 2 and 3. The time is 2:30, as we know from the pocket watch upstairs. Okay. We did not look at switchbacks. Turns at extreme angles disorient the mind, muddling your sense of direction as you go deeper into the maze, leading often as not to dead ends. Is there more of the painting that we have not examined? It was the manor house, the gardens. I think we've seen all of both. Can we open the painting? It isn't something you can open. Look behind painting. You pull the frame down from the wall, revealing a safe. We examine the safe. It's a safe with a dial that goes up to 30. You haven't dialed the safe to any combination yet. The safe is closed. Okay. Just to confirm, we can't simply open the safe. Yeah, the wall safe seems to be locked. So, that's everything for the east wall for now. Let's examine the south wall. A glass display case is mounted on the south wall. Examine the display case. It's the kind of display case that a high school would use to show off all its marching band trophies. In the glass display case are a cookie jar, a delicate glass jewelry box, a metal cylinder, a 14-sided die, and a cuckoo clock. Examine the cookie jar. An antique cookie jar in the shape of a smiling gnome. The lid is the gnome's head. They could have made it so the gnome's pointed hat was the lid, so you wouldn't have to pull off the gnome's head whenever you wanted a cookie, but they decided not to do it that way. Can we open the jar? The glass display case isn't open. Can we open the case? You open the glass display case. Now let's open the jar. You open the cookie jar, revealing a pink page. We take the pink page. We read it. A page of pink paper with these words written on it. A body part. Okay. Well, we do have the gnome's head. That could be considered a body part. Let's look at the glass jewelry box. The sides of this box are panes of glass, joined with delicate metal soldering and delicate little hinges. The lid is clasped with a delicate little lock. In the delicate glass jewelry box is a mastodon coin. Take mastodon coin. The delicate glass jewelry box isn't open. Well, let's open glass jewelry box. Seems to be locked. Unlock it. We don't have a matching key. There's too much to hope for. Okay, well, we'll come back to that. We definitely need that coin if the door has a lock that has coin-shaped recesses. Let's examine the display case again. Examine the cylinder. This tube of pinkish metal is made of 6 rings with letters going around them. There are 6 letters on each ring. For example, the letters on the first ring are B, P, E, V, T, and F. A pointer thingy indicates the word that the cylinder is currently set to. Pagans. Can we open the cylinder? Clearly it's supposed to open, but I think you have to set it the right 6-letter word for it to do that. So we think this is the one with at least 2 consonants that are side by side. If the first ring, I'm making more notes here, B, P, E, V, T, and F. Okay, let's look at second ring. This second ring on the cylinder bears letters A, I, R, E, H, and O. Okay. Let's examine the third ring. The third ring on the cylinder bears letters C, R, E, G, O, N. We should examine the fourth ring. The fourth ring on the cylinder bears the letters D, R, A, G, T, and E. Okay. Examine the fifth ring. The fifth ring on the cylinder bears the letters E, S, U, L, I, N. Okay. And the final sixth ring bears the letters R, T, E, S, A, and X. Okay. The cats are meowing, but I don't think they need my attention at the moment. So let us continue. We'll come back to the cylinder and its letters when we have finished examining the rest of the room, because I think that's the thing I want to start with if we don't have any other clues. We have a 14-sided die. A weirdly shaped wooden die. Its face is engraved with weird symbols. Based on my understanding of polyhedrons, generally speaking, you would not have a 14-sided die unless it is something that's like 14 faces arranged in a ring with ends that are shaped such that they cannot be landed on. So I've sometimes heard it referred to as crystal shaped. So it's basically a 14-sided cylinder that you then roll. But I understand that that kind of configuration can be hard to balance in a manner that makes it fair or as random as possible. Let's roll the die. You toss the die down in front of you. The side that ends up on top is marked with a symbol that resembles a T, but is not. Let's take the die. We know it's a red herring anyway. Let's roll it again. Okay, there's also nested triangles. We roll the die. Something that kind of resembles a snowflake or starburst. It kind of reminds me of a thorn symbol, but I don't know what it is. A double cross at an angle. 3 marks. T again. 3 marks. Starburst. An inset omega. Inset triangles. 3 asterisks. A sideways pointing triangle with diacritical marks. Yeah, a lot of different things. Linked rings. We'll keep that die. Okay. Examine the case. Cuckoo clock. There are a lot of clocks in this room. A wooden clock with a bunch of fancy carved bits, including a little door for a cuckoo to pop out of. It's set to 1:46 p.m. A little label on the bottom says this was carved by Leland Dyke. I didn't know he made clocks. Let's set cuckoo clock to 2:30. No. Set cuckoo clock to 2:29. Wait. Okay, the clock is not going to simply answer at 2:30 necessarily, so we'll come back to that as well. This was the south wall. Let's examine the west wall. There's a desk up against the west wall with a potted plant next to it, and above and between those two is a window with a mostly pleasant view. We'll check out the window. It looks like you're on the 5th or 6th floor of whatever building this is. Outside, low-hanging clouds are lit up yellow-orange by unseen streetlights. Snow is coming down in big puffy flakes and swirling across the surface of a frozen river. The streets are empty. It is the middle of the night. In the center of all this quiet beauty is an extremely bright LED billboard pointed right at your face. A strip of pink paper is wedged into the window frame. About which more later. First, let's check out this charming LED billboard. The billboard is really, really bright. Right now, it's displaying an ad for escapement puzzle rooms. There's an address and a phone number and a Twitter handle, and below that are some animal silhouettes. An orange deer. Oh, heck, it changed to the next ad. You'll have to wait for it to loop around. Okay. Examine the billboard again. Now it's an ad for the Lone Diamond Casino. They have an Elvis impersonator who performs alongside a Marilyn Monroe impersonator. We examine it again. Now the billboard is telling you that a local hospital thinks your baby is the most important thing. You don't even have a baby. Examine it again. Now there's an ad for the Electric Phantom, which deals in used video games and vaping supplies. Their mascot is a Grim Reaper guy blowing a smoke ring. Examine again. Now it's back to the ad for escapement puzzle rooms. The animals at the bottom are an orange deer, purple ape, a black boar, and a green wolf, which we will make note of since we had those animal figurines earlier. Orange deer, purple ape, black boar, green wolf. Okay. Let's examine the pink paper. Oh, no. Interesting. Okay, let's examine the strip. A little strip of pink paper stuck between the window and its frame. If anything's written on it, it's on the side you can't see. Can we open the window? It isn't something you can open. Tape. Take. Pink. Take strip. You carefully pull the strip of paper out of the frame without tearing it. Good job. We examine it. The writing on the pink paper says, there is an R in the word. Okay. Contains an R. Well, that narrows things down because not every ring has an R. There are R's in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th rings. So one of those 4 can be correctly identified as an R. Okay. Let's examine the window once more. My cat John Doe has arrived and is blocking the screen. I wish he would not do that. Let's push him out of the way a little bit. Okay. Let's examine the snow. You found that you can appreciate the fragile gorgeousness of snow a lot more when you're warm and indoors and fully clothed. I'll imagine. And the river. You can only see so much from up here. You can't tell where the river comes from or where it's going. On the other side of the river is that horrible LED billboard. And the streets. Snow is blowing across the streets and forming little drifts, but it looks like the worst of it has already been plowed away. Okay. Let's look at the desk. A slightly rusty office desk. It has a single drawer. On the desk are a paperweight, an angel statuette, and a cigar box, closed. We examine the paperweight. The paperweight is holding down a to-do list, which reads, lump of ambergris, meteor, camel. Okay. Lump of ambergris, meteor, camel. Is that the coins? Because there's 3 slots in the door mechanism. Let's just take the to-do list. The paperweight and the list underneath are glued to the desk. Weird. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's typical of escape rooms. Examine the desk again. We've got an angel statuette, which we know is a red herring, but we're going to go ahead and examine it anyway. A woman of ethereal beauty, her feathered wings framing her pearly shoulders, her long hair flowing in the wind, her low-cut robe pooling around her like a cloud as she reclines and contemplates the ineffable. I think she's made of plastic. We look under the statuette. Nothing of interest. Okay. I don't think there's going to be anything in it, because we already know it's a red herring, but we still try. Interesting. We can look in it, but there's nothing of interest. Okay. Examine the cigar box. There used to be a label on this rough wooden box, but it's been torn off, leaving a little scrap of adhesive behind, but no insignia. You can tell it's a cigar box, though, because you're a smart little girl. We open it, revealing a pink scroll. We examine the scroll. The scroll is rolled up, its contents hidden. Open scroll. You unroll the scroll, revealing these words: lady, chicken, fish, gold. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Open the desk drawer. Open desk. Okay. Open drawer. You open the drawer, revealing a torn scrap of paper and a jar of almonds. You pick up the jar and immediately realize it's empty. But we open it empty? You open the jar. It's empty. Okay. Then how is it a jar of almonds? I suppose there could be, like, an almond label on the jar? Like, the jar depicts almonds? In any case, examine torn scrap. A torn piece of pink paper which reads, it has 4 consonants. So 4 consonants, 2 of which are side by side, containing an R. Okay. We examine the floor. The floor is only a little dirty. On the floor are yourself and a garbage can. Let's examine the garbage can. A metal can painted industrial beige. In the garbage can are a crumpled paper and a manila folder. We take the crumpled, open it, read crumpled. A pink slip of paper with these words. It has 2 vowels. Well, we know that it has 2 vowels because it has 4 consonants, but I suppose a word of 6 consonants technically is also a word of 4 consonants. This safely concludes that there are exactly 2 vowels and 4 consonants. Examine manila. The little tab for labeling the folder is blank. The folder itself is closed. Open manila. You open the manila folder, revealing a tiny envelope. Examine envelope. The envelope is adorable. Open it. You open the tiny envelope, revealing a steel key. Take steel key. With this, we can finally open the second shelf? No. Third shelf? No. Fourth shelf? Nope, it's not on the shelves. It's not part of the safe or the mechanism. This opens the jewelry box. Open jewelry box with tiny steel key. Open jewelry box. Take Mastodon. Okay. We have the Mastodon key. Or Mastodon coin? A gold coin, or maybe a medallion, embossed with the image of an angry mastodon. Okay. Now, I think we can probably solve the mystery of our 6-letter word. It's right now set to the word pagans. It ends in R. Well, it has an R in it. If it ends in R, let's see. Let's examine the safe again. It has a dial that goes up to 30. You haven't dialed the safe to any combination yet. The safe is closed. Set cylinder to bagger. Open cylinder. Nope. Set cylinder to border. Open it. Nope. Okay. Well, let's see if there's... I'm looking to see if there are any... So the first 2 letters could be TH, and that would satisfy our 2 adjacent consonants rule. But there's only 2 vowels. And with the vowels in the third position being E and O, I don't like the options that I have here. It doesn't look right. Now, looking at this, I feel like the second letter is probably one of the vowels. Oh, Set cylinder to finger. You turn the rings around until the cylinder says finger. The end of the cylinder swings open and something falls out into your hand, a coin with a pterodactyl on it. So we have 2 of the coins now. Okay. A rosewood box in which are an ape figurine, a boar figurine, a cat figurine, a cow. Okay, so we know that there are orange deer, purple ape, black boar, green wolf. Take deer figurine. Take ape figurine. Take boar figurine. Take wolf figurine. Okay. Where do these go? Let's see. Nothing on the second. Read the short note again. Yeah, that's done. Examine the fourth. It's the poem, which is not a red herring directly. Just double checking the text of the poem for clues. Okay, we had... This is where ambergris was mentioned. Did I not actually make note? Okay, I did not make note of one of the things we discovered. Let's go back to west. There is the pink strip. No, not that. Drop pink strip. Crumpled. No, drop crumpled. Look in the garbage again. Okay, the garbage had the manila folder that had the envelope that had the key. So we're done there. Examine the desk. Lady Chicken Fish Gold. I made that note successfully, so that's not the issue. Display case. Cookie jar, metal cylinder, cuckoo clock. Right. It has a body part. Okay. Still trying to make sense of all this. Are we done with the jewelry box? I think we are. And the cylinder. The cookie jar has the gnome's head and told us a body part. Let's examine the wall safe. It just has a dial that goes up to 30. I think the clue that I'm currently looking for is going to give me words to pick out of the poem, which gives me numbers, which gives me the combination to the safe. So let's examine the north wall again. Top shelf is a laminated notice that just tells us what are red herrings. On the third shelf is the green vase and the short note. Okay, yep, that does not give me what I need. And the second shelf is empty. The first shelf has the figurines we've already taken. Double check that I don't have... Okay, I've got a ball of yarn. I'm carrying the painting. Okay. Pink page. No, that's the body part reminder. Let's just scroll up. We can do it that way. My wife is trying to say something to me, but she doesn't want to make sounds. What are you saying, Julie?
Can you pause?
I can pause, yeah. Let's, I'm stepping away for a moment. All right. Returning now. Thanks for your patience. I want to try something. Here was the first mention. Okay. Right. The paperweight is holding down the to-do list with a lump of ambergris, the meteor, and the camel. That's what we need to make note of. I don't know why that one slipped my mind, but ambergris, meteor, camel. So, let's go back up to the first mention. Ambergris is in the 17th line. The meteor was in the 6th line. And the camel was in the 22nd line. Okay. So, we examine the safe. It's a safe with a dial that goes up to 30. You haven't dialed the safe to any combination yet. The safe's closed. Dial 17. Set safe to 17. Set safe to 6. Set safe to 22. You dial 22 on the safe. Did that do it? Open safe. You open the wall safe, revealing a saber-toothed tiger coin. Take saber-toothed tiger coin. Taken. Okay. So we now have 3 coins. A saber-toothed tiger coin, a pterodactyl coin, a mastodon coin. Let's examine the mechanism now. The mechanism is a sort of field-shaped thing with 5 circular indentations, each about 3 inches in diameter. Okay, 5 coins are needed, potentially. Oh. Okay. What am I missing next? Lady chicken, fish, gold. Okay. Let's see what we need to do now. Put mastodon in mechanism. Put tiger in mechanism. Put pterodactyl in mechanism. Okay. So far, so good. But I feel we are beginning to run out of things. Let's consider. We need to examine the west wall. Potted plant next to it. Examine potted plant. This type of plant is called a snake plant, or mother-in-law's tongue. How wicked. There's a pink card half hidden inside the lip of the pot. Pink card. Read it. On the card is written, the I comes right before the N. Okay, well that would have been helpful a while ago, but we've already solved finger. Okay. Look behind plant. Look behind desk. Okay, excuse me. Let's double check the desk. We already have the paperweight. The ancient statuette is a look under cigar box. Okay. Examine the south wall. Examine display case. Cookie jar. The cookie jar contained a note that said a body part. Right, a finger. That it's telling us that's what that was for. Okay. A delicate glass jewelry box we have opened. The metal cylinder we have opened. The cuckoo clock we have not yet solved. Examine the clock. The painted one. The clock indicates the phase of the moon, the region of the zodiac in which the sun rejoices, and the current time. It is 2:30. And if we examine the cuckoo clock, with a bunch of fancy card bits, including a little door for a cuckoo to pop out of, it's set to 2:29 a.m. Set cuckoo clock to 2:30 p.m. That was all it took, was just setting to the correct... That's silly. Okay, that's good though. We figured that out. Something clicks inside the clock. Did you break it? As you're leaning in to inspect the device, suddenly it whistles cuckoo, 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 very loud, directly into your face. The little door opens up and a coin shoots out, striking you painfully in the nose before falling to the floor. Then the door closes and the cuckooing stops. So now if we look, a Tyrannosaurus coin, of course. A Tyrannosaurus is Ebenezabeth's most connected prehistoric animal. We take the Tyrannosaurus coin, Put Tyrannosaurus. I'm just playing fast and loose with spelling here for some reason. In mechanism. Okay. So what else are we missing? We have it's the figurines. Rosewood box. This is a beautifully crafted rosewood box with intricate inlays all over its polished surfaces. The lid of the box has 4 square panels sticking up slightly from its corners. One is green, one is purple, one is orange, and one is black. Put deer on orange panel. Okay, well, excuse me. Let's close the box then. Rosewood. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Okay, put deer on orange panel. Put ape on purple panel. Put boar on black panel. And put wolf on green panel. Okay, the box shutters and a secret compartment slides open so violently that the 4 figurines clatter to the floor. Examine secret compartment. A rectangular space is opened in the lid of the rosewood box. It opened really fast. Maybe the mechanism is hydraulic? I'm surprised Ebenezabeth knows about hydraulic mechanisms, but I guess she has had a year in which to learn about a variety of mechanisms. She is a very clever little girl after all. In the secret compartment is a Triceratops coin. Take Triceratops coin. Right, all of the coins were prehistoric. I forgot. Let's put Triceratops in mechanism. You place the Triceratops coin in the last indentation. The door makes a dramatic chunk noise. Open. Metal door. No. Open door. You open the steel door. Out. Hallway. The building is dark. The hallway leads north. We go north. Hallway. There's another room on the east side of the hall. We go east. Lounge. A dark room with a big comfy chair, a coffee table, and not much else. A computer monitor gives the scene a pallid blue cast. We examine the chair. It appears to be covered in some sort of microfiber. We sit in the chair. You lower yourself into the chair and groan comfortably. You deserve a quick break after all that. Examine the coffee table. A low black table, essentially featureless, probably from IKEA. On the coffee table is a purse. Again, I guess the little girl has gotten around in the last year because I would not have realized she could identify IKEA furniture at a glance. On the other hand, that might just be the narrator speaking to us, who is historically both Hans Christian Andersen and Ryan Veeder at the same time. Open the purse. You open the purse, revealing a cigarette lighter and some other less interesting stuff. Let's examine the computer monitor before we leave. There's a video feed on the monitor depicting the room you were just in. It's empty, of course. The door is open. I don't suppose there's a way to visit the Escapeology Twitter account? Probably not. Let's just go ahead and light our lighter. This particular cigarette lighter has a motif of pink roses. We light the lighter. You switch on the lighter and a little yellow flame appears on top. We examine the flame. You stare into the fire. You extend your will into the cosmos. Somewhere out there is the place you're looking for. You're very close now. You are in the woods. Woods. Mist slinks like a withered viper between the trees. Your destination is north, deeper in the woods. We examine the mist. Thirsty fog coils around your boots. This would be the same woods where we awaited the coming of the werewolf with our hunters the other night when we were in the court of Maldweb. We examine the trees. The trees are so thick that you cannot see the sky. We travel north. Woods. Animal bones stick out of the mud. Just a little farther. We examine the bones. A nameless beast, a thing that never walked the earth. We examine the mud. The soil is like tar. We go north. Woods. Brambles grope at your arms and cheeks. There's a hovel up ahead. We examine the brambles. Seems like only thorny vines and bushes grow among these trees. We examine the hovel. A slumped hut with no door in its doorway. We enter the hovel. Hovel. A bony old man leans over a crib built from twigs. We examine the crib. A crude and uncomfortable nest. In the crib is a baby. We examine the baby. It's asleep. We examine the bony old man. He is ancient and loathsome. His hair lies in a few wisps over his head. His face is furrowed with 1,000 wrinkles. He looks back at you and sneers. His teeth are yellow stumps. We talk to the bony old man. Time's up, you tell him. He waves the motion away. A yellow fingernail grazes your nose. No, no, not for me. I have all the time in the world. He glances back at the crib. The child inside is smooth and perfect. You still have a chance to go quietly, you tell him. The others all did. Ha! A wad of hot mucus lands on your cheek. How many of my kind have you met? You take a steady breath. 18, I think. He throws his head back and chortles. 18 years! Still a little girl. Still stupid in the ways of the world. I'm hardly the first to take my fate in my own hands, but I will be the last. I'll... He starts wheezing, then heaving. We will show the revolver to the old man. The revolver is of no concern to the old year, but it should be. We talk to the old man, but there's nothing left to say. We shoot the old man. You fire into his chest. The explosion shakes the walls. The old year's throat makes a sound like a bubble popping. He falls to the floor. Black blood oozes over the soil. You peer into the crib. The baby's still asleep. We take the baby. You take the baby in your arms. We go out. Woods. Brambles grope at your arms and cheeks. There's a hovel up ahead. We wake. You wake up. Lounge. A dark room with a big comfy chair, a coffee table, and not much else. A computer monitor gives the scene a pallid blue cast. We wake. You wake up. Surface, the side of a rocky hill. The module's descent stage is still here. The lunar rover is here too. We examine the rover? It doesn't look structurally sound. Okay. We wake. You wake up. Stomach. A wrecked sailing ship is smashed against one side of the terrible dogfish's immense stomach. The organ is large enough to accommodate 2 or 3 more such vessels. In the middle of the chamber, on the high ground between puddles of acid, is a little table. I think we cannot disturb our friends as they avail themselves of their new supplies, so let us wake up. Monument. A statue of a T-Rex stands on a basalt pedestal, posed in a triumphant roar. In front of the dinosaur is a black brazier. There seem to be things west and northwest from here. Examine the cyber skull. Nah, he's gone. You can't see that or it's not implemented. Yep. Okay. Wake up. Temple of Hera. Giant crumbled columns stand over the great altar where a metal bowl sits, angled to point at where the sun should be. The gravel path leads south and west. We wake up. You blink and the world seems to melt before your eyes. Physicality fluctuates in spasms in the space between spaces. The little girl is trying to hold herself together, trying to hold on to the baby. And as she comes to her senses, the cold of New Year's Eve crept back into her limbs. Bedroom. The little girl stood in her bedroom. Her birthday cake was on a plate on her bedside table. Its candle, now extinguished, lay nearby. Her little brown cat was curled up on the bed, sleeping peacefully. From elsewhere in the house she could hear her papa snoring. She was awfully tired after her long errand, but before she could go to sleep herself, she had to conclude her business on the roof. Presently, the cat awakened, though the little girl had not made a sound, and leapt down from the bed to greet its mistress. We greet the cat. "And how are you this evening, Puss?" asked the little girl, but the cat's response spoke more to a general feeling of resignation than to any strong feelings in one direction or the other. We pet the cat. She gave the cat a few gentle pets and scritches until the animal produced a noise that the little girl knew to mean, "Yes, that is sufficient. You may go about your own business until next I require you." She was carrying a baby, a space helmet being worn, a ball of yarn, and a revolver. Of all the things to come back, I am surprised that it is the space helmet that we are still wearing, but not the boots. I guess the helmet was more instrumental in its time, but examine the yarn. It was a ball of coarse blue yarn, which the little girl had found in a wrecked ship inside a giant shark. The revolver. The little girl carried a long, heavy revolver which had been manufactured in America. The steel was engraved with a curling design that looked like leaves or else like flames. Right, that's not changed. We examine the helmet. It was a truly bizarre object, entirely out of place, and yet the girl imagined she might find some use for it someday. And the baby. The little thing was still asleep. We go up. Roof. A blanket of snow lay over the roof and along the parapet where a group of sparrows perched, shivering impatiently. All around was the dark city of London, and above was the dark sky. We talked to the sparrows. The sparrows began chirping wildly in anticipation as they noticed Ebenezer arrival, until their leader, the sparrow with the white poll, shushed them. "It is done?" The sparrow's eyes bulged like an owl's. "Is the old man dead?" Ebenezer nodded. The younger sparrows all shrieked for joy at this, but the eldest remained serious. "And the child?" "I have brought the baby with me," said Ebenezer, revealing the infant and eliciting from the younger sparrows an even greater outpouring of emotion. Their leader, in turn, issued a shrill whistle, which the little girl took at first as an admonition to the other sparrows to cease their jubilations. The bird with the white poll went on whistling even after the sparrows had quieted, though, and soon it became clear to Ebenezer that it was some sort of signal. In another moment, it was clear for whom the signal was intended, for from out of the cloudy sky descended a massive bird of dazzling white plumage. It was the stork himself, and he alighted on the parapet to join the sparrows. They looked quite small indeed, perched next to such a creature. The little girl recovered quickly from her shock and bowed deeply. "It is an honor to meet you, Mr. Stork," she said. The great bird nodded in acknowledgment. "Thank you, Ebenezer Scrooge, for rescuing the New Year. There are some who feared that 1846 would go on forever, but most of us had faith in your success." "I am happy to have helped," said Ebenezer, presenting the baby to the stork. "If ever I can assist you again, you must not delay in asking." I think this is a bit of an anachronism, because if I'm recalling correctly, the adventure in which we transformed the various kings of various kingdoms back from their former status when we met the Queen of Vampires meant we met the stork at that time. So that technically should have happened first, but again, this game was written first, and I don't think Ryan anticipated just how far afield his various adventures he would compose would take him, and Ebenezer's timeline. The stork nodded again and accepted the swaddled parcel in his great beak. Then he spread his wings. What a sight! And launched himself into the clouds to bear the infant to its appointed place. "We will depart now, too," declared the sparrow with the white poll, and the sparrows all flew off together, leaving the little girl and her little cat alone on the roof. Right, we are no longer waiting for any key. Can we sing now? No, unfortunately, we should. If we were going to sing, we should have done so when we were in one of the other areas, but we missed our opportunity. So that's something you can look up for yourself when you choose to play this. Let us go down. Bedroom. The little girl stood in her bedroom. Her birthday cake was on a plate on her bedside table. Its candle, now extinguished, lay nearby. Elsewhere in the house she could hear her papa's snoring. She felt as if she couldn't stay awake another second. So we sleep. The little girl climbed into bed. Her cat jumped up after her, finding its usual spot nestled against her breast. A great sonorous knell sounded far away, the church bell tolling the hour. Midnight had come at last. The little girl counted along in a soft voice. 2, 3, 4, 5. But then she fell fast asleep. The Little Match Girl 2, Annus Evertens, written and directed by Hans Christian Andersen, programmed by Ryan Veeder, Inform 7 by the Inform 7 team, Vorpal by the Vorpal team. Editor Emily Bogheim, production designer Jenny Polodna, other editor Rich Cheng, director of photography Carolyn Van Esseltine, casting Carl Muckenhaupt, lurker Derek Sotak, whisperer Matthew Zimmerman, carpentry Doug Orleans, special thanks Emily Short, very special thanks Jacques Frichet, specialist thanks Maiko Ziegler, thanks specialist Janice M. Eisen, supporting cast Kat Manning, secretary Sammy El Barawi, listener Paul Stanley, surfer Matt Schneider, freelance daydreamer Alan Tan, special effects Kenneth Hahn, very special effects Ivan R, normal effects Sarah Nervoso, oh my goodness. I tried to keep up, but sadly, I have missed my opportunity to keep up. So, I leave the reading of the names of the various Patreon patrons to your own exercise. Ebenezabeth Scrooge will return in The Little Match Girl 3, The Aeschylus Manifold, The End. Copyright HCA MDCCCXLVII. Thank you for joining me. This has been Jay Essen, and I look forward to our next adventure with the Little Match Girl.